you kind of learn to use that.
Gene set inspector. So where's the inspector? Touch a gene, and then where's the inspector? I missed it.
Oh, yeah, to get the inspector for a gene set,
Right.
you'll double click on any gene set, and it'll open up that inspector that contains a list of all the genes in that gene set.
Oh, okay, that's good. All right. Okay. 'Cause those are gene sets. And yeah, it's confusing. You got gene set. And what's the middle compartment? Samples.
This is for groups. So if you had different samples in a workspace, you could combine them into groups. Now, I will say I'm using this much less frequently in SeqGeek than I would in, say, FlowJo. And more background here. All of these, except for the gene sets, the rest of this dialogue is very similar to what's available in FlowJo.
All right.
So I'm just guessing that probably you're not a flow person, you're coming from a different kind of world, and so I can totally understand why this is a foreign concept.
No, I am a flow person.
Oh, okay.
It's still a foreign concept.
Got it, okay.
What's in the bottom is what? The bottom, it looks interesting. The bottom, I mean, I'm just thinking of terminology because I don't even know where to. Sometimes I want to put a, what do you call, to put a sample in, and the samples go in where? The middle one? You drop them in the middle one? This is a strange. I know this is like 101 or 11 of this, but the sample drops where? To the bottom one or the middle one or the top one?
Yeah, what I normally do is just drag the sample right into the bottom here.
Okay.
This is what we call the samples area. So if you have multiple samples, they'll appear here in the samples section of the workspace. But the way it works, all samples are always in the all samples group. So a sample added here will also go into the all samples group.
Right. Well, how do they get up to the gene area? What do you call the top area? The gene?
So these are gene sets.
Gene set area.
And so far, all of these, with the exception of the interferon gene set, were created by drawing geometric shapes or gates within within the graph.
Right, and then so you did when you did the right. I see the gene. So you get this gene sets, but this new thing you just did not. Like the gating you did just now, CD19 positive, it did not show up in the gene set area.
Right, because we're in cell view.
Oh, okay.
So when I draw a gate in cell view, it appears as a population within a sample. And in this case, we have one, we called it just like a couple of question marks here. And you would see if I move this out of the way. If I move this gate around, we're going to change the contents of this gate live, okay?
Yeah.
So here's the gate that we're playing with, where we currently contain 45 cells. If I move that, you'll see 200, 600, 1,000, 2,000, so on and so forth. We're just kind of changing where that gate exists, and therefore what cells are contained inside of it.
Yeah, now Ian, this is very critical because we kind of understand this. This does look like FlowJo. You move it around the gate. It's on gene view. No, it's on cell view actually. But you move it around, and then you want a gate on those cells that look that way and make a special group. But let me ask you, how did you make that box? It was like you hit question mark, or what did you do? You did something to get that little rectangle?
To make this rectangle, let me recreate it.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take either from the workspace or back in the graph window, I'll just click delete on my keyboard. It's going to delete that population. It'll ask me if I'm sure I want to delete it. Yes, I am. Now I can go up here and choose one of these grading tools. And we've got lots of different grading tools, just basically the same as FlowJo.
Mm-hmm.
If I select a rectangle, then I can just drag and drop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just dragged and then set that as, again, maybe a question mark, because I don't know what this game is, but...
Oh, I see. So you just give it a name, but it doesn't... I see. And then you move it around. And what is it showing now? It's showing... I see. What does it mean, that number in the middle of the rectangle?
Right. This is frequency apparent. So the frequency of the QC pop. In this case, 4 cells makes up 0.086% of those 4,000 cells.
I see. Now, what if you move it up? Can you, for example, the gate on the CD19, if you move it over there, and you move it over there, can you make a gate of those and then make I guess, a gene or cell population? How would
Yeah,
you?
so the quadrant gate automatically makes 4 gates, right? And that's
Oh,
what
right, okay.
CD19 positive, CD3 negative.
All right, so that you already got that down there. Now, how do you get that up into the gene gate? You know, the number of genes. Like, you want to know
Yeah,
what?
so of course, the genes themselves are a little bit, I would say, independent of these gates, with the exception of CD19 and CD3, because obviously those are the genes that we're utilizing here to do this game. But if we want to get into GeneView, then we need to have a set of populations that we're interested in. And in this case, maybe we'd be interested in CD19. So if I am interested in CD19, something I often do is look at the differential expression of CD19 positive cells relative to the rest of the data. So to create that comparison, I'm going to go ahead and create a NOT gate. So that's just a Boolean gate, and that can be found in the workspace tab of the workspace.
Right.
I choose Boolean and then select Make NOT gate. You'll see we get this CD3 minus, CD19 positive minus. Now that's 2,000 cells. Those are the 2,000 cells not contained in this gate. And that can be a little bit much, but does that make sense? It's just a Boolean NOT gate of this CD19 positive gate.
Yeah. Well, you'd want to have you know. Why can't you just make a? You don't need the NOT gate unless you need it, but why can't you just do Q1? You know what I mean? You got Q1 there.
Q1 is CD19 positive.
Right.
The NOT gate is Q2 plus Q3 plus Q4.
Oh, right, okay.
And we could have done that. It's just a little bit perhaps more complicated because I would select these 3 populations, go to the Boolean option, and make an OR gate. And then we're going to get the same exact set of cells, 2004 and 2004. It's the same thing, just like
that or that, right?
Yeah. And I could even illustrate this. If I open up the layout editor and add in our original population, I could do like an overlay of the NOT gate. You can see it's all those blue. Well, that looks a little bit wrong. Why are these red ones red? That doesn't look quite right.
Well, it's close enough, I guess. Well, it's trying.
Yeah, that looks a little bit off. I think that's a problem with our transform, maybe. There we go. I'm not sure what changed there. That's more like it. And now if I want to see CD19 on top of that.
It's the same. Right.
Yeah, so these 2 are the same. And the only reason I'm doing this is to get into differential expression analysis.
Yeah.
If I go back to the GeneView, then the thing I want to compare everything against is my CD19 NOT gate. And what I probably want to compare that with is CD19. So from here, I can run. So now I'm comparing CD19 positive versus everything that's not CD19 positive. And I'm going to say, how does that? I'm going to ask Wiki to calculate the fold change and the adjusted p-value for that comparison. And from there, I can gate on upregulated genes within CD19. And CD3 minus, CD19 positive. When it finishes calculating, so because I'm drawing a gate in GeneView, maybe this gets your question about how do I get information back into GeneView. Drawing this positive gate here, I get this up in CD3 minus, CD19 positive. And if I open it up, sure enough, CD19 is the gene contained in that gate.
How did you get it to gene? Because I see it up here. There's one gene, but now it's up there in the gene view window. That's a key thing. How did you get it from the lower window, I guess, to the gene view window? How was that again?
Yeah, so it's just these two tabs at the top. So if I switch to cell view, I'm now looking at cells, and if I switch back to gene view, I'm now looking at gene.
Okay. And then how do you get that to go over to, how did you get that to go up to the gene set? I'm sorry, the top window.
Yeah, so I can draw, it's usually more relevant to draw gates in this volcano plot.
Yeah.
But I can also draw gates of any kind, within this comparison plot.
Yeah. And then
So,
what? And then how does it get,
Once he's in the gene,
So
when
I click OK, I'm going to get a gene set calculated back in this.
Oh, because you're in gene view, and then you get it. Oh, right, I understand. In gene view, if you draw a gate, it'll pop up there as a population in the gene. Or if you're in cell view, if you draw a gate, it'll pop up down here in the cell cluster. Okay.
You got it. And then these things, I should mention, these gene sets update live as well. So if I make this a little bit wider, it should eventually calculate the rest of the genes, that are also upregulated. If I'm being more generous in terms of my fold change cutoff.
Right. Well, that's interesting too.
And then we start to see HLAs come in there, which we might expect for cells, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So those are the ones. So, it seems like, well, what if you get, I don't know how many genes are. The genes are all scrunched, all the ones up at 10 to the minus 14 or 13, something like that, at the top.
Yeah, you're talking about this line here.
Yeah.
That is artificial. This is not biologically true. Actually, this is right where our
Limited.
For the algorithm to calculate adjusted p-values runs out. So
they're up higher than that, but you don't care. You don't want to get the ones. 10 to the minus 13 and lower. 10 to the minus 4 seems pretty good, but I guess those are not. They're not relevant. The fold. You got the fold change, and I see twofold. Yeah, that's always a good thing to do too. All right.
Yeah, usually I do twofold, but in this case, there's only really probably one gene, CD19, that's upregulated above twofold. So if I wanted to look at other genes that are upregulated, I had to move this over almost to 1.5, which I have seen researchers use a fold change of 1.5 as their upregulated threshold.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it's up to the researcher really where they want to set that. And if you want to get really, really exacting in terms of that gate, we do have this option, this tab under graph, where you can choose manually enter gate. And if I select that, I can get really, really detailed and draw something like, maybe like right at 1.2, up to the upper limit, which is 4. That's like I guess the highest upper fold change, and it's probably at a low p-value somewhere there. And I can also set my p-value, so maybe from 0 to 0.05.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd have to call this something like up B cells. And then we'll see an up B cells gate is generated here, and it contains 15 features.
Okay. Now, before we run out of time, I was thinking. So we'll play with this part. Can you do one? Show us how to. For example, we've got a set of cells, or I should say, cells defined by a gene. I don't know if it's interferon expressed down here in the cell. Can you show us how to look at the VDJs in those cells compared to the other cells?
Yes, I can. What I would typically want to do for VDJ is arrive at a set of, say, unbiased clusters to make